Welcome to the Quantum Healing Oracle. In this channel, I use astrology and tarot to bring forward intuitive guidance to offer clarity and direction and to help you live your most empowered and inspired life. My name's Pam. If you enjoy my content, please feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps this channel reach more people who might have use for this kind of information. So today we're going to go look at the astrology. Jupiter's turning direct. We're going to go and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've come to understand this transit at this time, and then we'll take a look at the astrological chart. And then we'll go a layer deeper and see what energies show up with the tarot. So as always, please only take what resonates. These are my interpretations of the energies, and nothing is ever set in stone. You have multiple paths available to you at all times, and it's ultimately up to you to choose the path that works best for you. So in yesterday's video, I shared about how one of the fundamental qualities of consciousness is that it's relational. It's the way that we learn to relate with ourselves and with others and the world that we learn to grow and expand our understanding of ourselves and learn to have different kinds of experiences. So if you'd like to check out that video, you can go to my page and you'll find I posted it yesterday. So when I tuned into this transit, what I was shown is that the way that consciousness perceives energy, and everything is made of energy, everything is made of source energy. And when consciousness goes to perceive this energy, it perceives it as information. And so we're not talking just about specific information like you would learn from a book or research. This is just sensory data. This is the input that we get from our senses, the information that we gather from our experiences. And it was showing me that this information is perceived in a polarity in two different ways, in a positive expression and a negative expression. And this is not a value judgment talking about like positive and negative emotions. This is just the expression of the energy being in a positive form, which is electrical, and it represents our thoughts and our inspiration and our direction. Or the negative polarity is magnetic, and it represents our feelings, our intuition, and our desire. And so this is why we see in our world that electromagnetism is one of the fundamental forces that is present everywhere, because it's the interplay and the exchange of these two polarities that are working together to create different forms and a variety of different ways of expressing itself. And so what I was shown is it's very similar to how if you were to design a computer program or create a video game, what's really going on there is there's coding. There's coding that the programmers are putting in. And that coding is, in a sense, being interpreted to create the world or the computer program or the environment in which the computer is displaying. And one of the simplest forms of understanding code is similar to binary code. It's just like ones and zeros. And so that's just kind of a mirror reflection and a way of understanding how this positive and negative energy is working together and always creating different combinations of itself. And it literally writes the levels of code, and it codes the information that we then perceive as being our reality. So we experience a world, we experience bodies, we experience universes and solar systems. But underneath that, there is a way of understanding the baseline levels of information that are being exchanged, and that coding is always being rewritten and changed. Okay? And so what this has to do with Jupiter is that a lot of classical astrologers talk about Jupiter as representing abundance and luck and expansion. And when I really tune in with Jupiter's energy, I perceive it as being coherence. And coherence is when all the different parts and pieces of something are working in harmony together. And so it's kind of like when you're driving your car. When everything in the car is working as it should, the car drives fine. But as soon as something isn't working in the car, then the whole car has problems. And so this is how we understand the difference between when energy is being experienced in coherence, or if it's not, which is called fragmentation, when you have to kind of look at the separate pieces and see how those separate pieces aren't necessarily working together. And so they call Jupiter the greater benefic, and they call Venus the lesser benefic. And in the same way that Venus's role is to create coherence in relationships. It always seeks to balance out relationships. So that's happening in a more personal sphere. And so Jupiter's energy is creating coherence with life itself, with the entire human experience. And it's doing the same thing. It's always shifting and changing and bringing what's needed in order to balance the energies, in order for everything to work together, in order for harmony to be restored. And so how I've seen this last Jupiter retrograde period is that when Jupiter goes retrograde, that process of coherence turns inward. And we start looking at the parts of ourselves which may be fragmented and not working well together. And it addresses that situation by bringing specific changes to the code, specific changes in our perception, and brings us the information that we need in order to balance the system and begin to bring those different pieces within ourselves into alignment so that they're working together and begin creating inner coherence again. And so I see this Jupiter turning direct as being, we've been in this process of understanding what's been going on as we're creating inner coherence, but as Jupiter goes direct, it then begins to reflect and create more of the experience of an outer coherence in the way that we relate with the world. And because the world is essentially a mirror reflection of our inner state, I see that the deepest changes always need to be made within first. Because if we just expect the world to change on the outside, but we don't make changes within ourselves, we are out of touch with how personal power really works and how the nature of our experience is reflective. That we're not meant to just go and fix things and change things in the outer world so we can feel better inside. We go into the inner world and see what's fragmented in that landscape, and we bring those pieces back into harmony and coherence, and then naturally the reflection of that inner coherence becomes our experience of outer coherence in our reality. So I see this as being one of the fundamental lessons that humanity is learning right now, especially because there's so many triggers and challenging reflections in our external world, that as long as people are still focusing on thinking we need to just fix and change the external world, we're not going to see where the true power lies, where the true ability to create that inner coherence will then result in the outer reflection, showing that back to us. So I see this as a powerful moment in our journey because, as we know, and what I talked about in my video yesterday, all the personal planets are going through the last sections of the zodiac and going through Pisces, and they're kind of in a dissolution mode. They're dissolving, and the parts of ourselves that are no longer needed are falling away, and the pieces of ourselves that haven't been seen and integrated are coming to the surface. And so that's reflecting that deep inner process of establishing coherence within. That once we understand how powerful that is, and that that's just how the universe works, then we can understand by doing that within ourselves, we can expect the world to reflect back that outer coherence. And it gives us more of that sense that this is actually something that we can do to contribute to creating peace in the world and creating coherence on the entire planet, which is obviously what everybody wants at this time. So that's kind of the way I was shown how to see what Jupiter's going through right now, and also as it moves forward and it expresses in its direct motion, to begin to look for those signs that that coherence is arriving in the outer world, specifically through relationships or certain dynamics that seem like they might have been out of balance. When they come into balance, recognize that and create that positive feedback loop of like, oh, right, I balance these energies within myself, and so now I'm seeing these energies balanced in my environment. And that's a real powerful way of building the belief system and the knowing that that's how we change the world. So, well, let's take a look at the chart. Okay, so here we have Jupiter turning direct in the sign of Cancer. And what makes Jupiter in Cancer so important at this time is that Cancer represents the way that we feel supported by our closest connections. It can represent the connection to our home and our family. And it's really those relationships and those aspects of our life that we feel most nurtured and most cared for within. And so when Jupiter is going through its retrograde motion in Cancer, it's treating the inner landscape with that same kind of sensitivity and that same type of care. So that's why it can hold space for some of these fragmented parts that are wanting to feel comfortable, feel safe, feel supported within the self, feel that they're welcomed back into the family, so to speak. And so that's how I personally have been experiencing this retrograde. Is it's been a deep inner healing process of some of the parts of myself that were really hard to hold space for and understand what they needed, and to hear the voices of those pieces and to understand how that was going to fit and work with the rest of myself. And so that's that inner coherence that I was talking about. But it's an inner coherence that's created through a great deal of care and compassion, nurturing, and support. Okay, so here we have Jupiter is forming a trine to the planets in Pisces. And I was talking about yesterday, these planets, the inner planets that are moving through Pisces. Specifically here we have the Sun, we have Mercury, we have the North Node, we have Mars. And so in a way, this inner coherence, this nurturing capacity of the self is very much supporting these different aspects of our personality. I like to say that the inner planets represent the very unique parts of our human consciousness, the way that we think, the way that we are motivated, the way that we wish to express our light and our love. And so these parts of ourselves, as we understand what's going on in the changes that are happening, are very much supported by, again, the nurturing, the support that's happening within Jupiter. Now, specifically, I feel drawn to this North Node because I feel that the North Node is really amplifying this whole process. The North Node is showing us where we need more experiences and more understanding that is assisting us in our evolution. And because it's happening in Pisces, and in yesterday's video I talked about the way that we relate with Pisces is the way we relate with spirit, the way we relate with our connection to the universe, and how that way that we relate with spirit then mirrors the way that we relate with others in our life. And so it just really shows that this is the key function of our evolution at this time, is to not only bring the aspects of ourselves into inner coherence so we feel that we're functioning as a whole unit, but that also is deeply connected to our relationship with spirit. And you can feel, if you feel into it, how that's so connected. It's the way we feel part of spirit. Spirit, in a sense, is bringing coherence to all of its parts, which are us. And as if we are the pieces of spirit within itself, that it's coming into coherence, and therefore we're bringing coherence to the pieces within ourselves. So this feels like a very powerful, very potent healing of that which has been separated, that which is felt denied and rejected, and just not been able to integrate into the totality of our being at this time. It feels like we have such a rich potential of moving forward in a very positive way. Now, the other aspect that I'm being drawn to here is how the moon is creating a couple of very harmonious aspects to the Saturn-Neptune, and also the transiting Chiron. Okay? And so, again, the moon kind of represents the parts of ourself that we're exploring that we don't fully understand, and the Saturn-Neptune is showing us how to step into that new potential of our new identity. So this is, again, another very harmonious, very supportive aspect, that the exploration that we're doing within ourselves is designed to help us align with the new potential and the ability to shift into a new way of being. And it's also very harmoniously supported by the Chiron energy, which is integrating our deepest wounds, the parts of ourselves that have been hurt in such a way that it has crafted our response to that to be very unique. When we respond to the Chiron energy, we embrace our uniqueness. And even though we've been through a lot of challenges, those challenges forge us to operate in a very unique way. And that unique, authentic expression in itself is very valuable. There's also a couple of challenging aspects that we have here that the transiting moon is actually challenging in a square to those same inner planets and the North Node that I was talking about, that Jupiter's supporting it. So that shows me that there still is some emotional reconciliation that's happening in this process. So even though this is a deep inner coherence that's impacting a very powerful spiritual alignment, that not all the emotions are fully on board with this process yet, and that's okay. That we can honor what comes up as it comes up and begin to integrate those pieces as they become available. The thing I feel that Jupiter teaches us about inner coherence is that once we develop the skills and the abilities of understanding alchemy, of understanding shadow work, of understanding integration of the unknown and unexpressed self, those tools become very strong and they begin to function more in real time. So whereas in the past, when challenging emotions would come up and things would trigger us that we didn't understand, we couldn't process it quickly. We kind of had to take time to integrate that information and understand how to process that. And now it feels like it's happening in real time. That when triggers come up and challenging emotions arise, we just naturally respond to the integration and the alchemy process because we've been through this in so many ways, through so many levels, that we're becoming more conscious that this is an ongoing process, but we feel how we have the tools. We feel how we have the ability to meet those pieces as they come up. Okay, so this is kind of what I was talking about, that information that's happening in the coding right now, is that the levels of coding that are available on Earth are becoming much more harmonious, much more integrated, much more coherent, and we get to experience that, and as it feels like healing. It feels like coming back to yourself. It feels like a reunion with parts of yourself that had been estranged. But really, it's just the exchange and the working together of that positive and negative polarity that makes everything feel like it's operating together. And the core fundamental, I think, lesson behind this is that as we practice and we develop this inner coherence, which is getting these fragmented, polarized parts that didn't work together to begin to work together, the next challenge is to show up and reflect that into the world and begin to allow the polarities that we see playing out in the world learn to work together. Because it's clear that we're experiencing such a strong reflection of polarity in this external environment. And if we just stay polarized and we keep pointing the finger to the other side, thinking that this conflict is never going to end, then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if we understand that the healing work we're doing within is the alchemy, is the merging of those polarities to work in harmony again, then we can use our own personal lives and our relationship with the world at large to do the same thing with self-awareness and confidence, to enter the world and say, where in my life am I feeling polarized with another person or with a situation? How can I see that these polarities might actually be able to work together, and just be open to new ways of experiencing how you can honor yourself and your authenticity and the unique way that you run your energy, and you can honor that expression in others. And when that becomes fully embodied and fully experienced, you'll be surprised at how much you'll see others reflect back that harmonization and that coherence. I just had the experience today where I'd had conflict with a band member, and everything in me was feeling like I wasn't going to be able to play in the band anymore, that the conflict was too strong because we were so different. And I did this inner work where I felt what I needed to feel come back into myself and honored that. And I communicated with him, and he did the inner work. It brought a piece back into himself, and our relationship is naturally feeling more harmonious. And so I think we should be open to the idea that as long as we are still fighting polarity in the world, that's okay, because that's showing us where the emotions and the limiting beliefs and the conditioned programs are hardwired for that conflict. That we can honor that we've been programmed that way. We can have compassion for the understanding that we incarnated in a world that for generations and generations have known nothing but to continue to fight polarity. But know there's a different potential that's available right now, and know how to access it, and have complete personal responsibility to make that shift within, and then show yourself how powerful that is when you begin to cooperate and work and heal and reconcile polarity in the world. So one more thing I'd like to touch on about the astrology before we move to the tarot is that I've charted this transit both in tropical and in sidereal astrology. And if you don't know the difference, I did make a video about what makes my reading style unique, and it's in the description box. But basically, I see tropical astrology as being connected to the seasons of the earth, and it reflects the conditions and patterns and programs of the earth more. And so I often use tropical charts on this channel more because I feel we're going through a very powerful time of healing and releasing those patterns and programs and balancing out that karma that we came in to experience. And the difference when I read a sidereal chart is it actually aligns more with the direct constellations. And so the energy influence is a more direct conduit to cosmic consciousness, or the actual celestial imprint of those constellations. And the way I see them working together is we have to resolve our conditions and patterned karma that have been held in the planet before we can fully be open to receiving the cosmic consciousness in a clearer way. So when I look at Jupiter in Cancer, if you chart that in the sidereal chart, it's actually in Gemini. And what's powerful about tapping into feeling Jupiter operating in Gemini in that way is that that is the ability to be open to integrate and receive this cosmic information and organize it into a form that's able to be communicated and understood in a very grounded way. And I think that that's important at this time, because as long as we're caught up in this process of inner fragmentation, we aren't necessarily as clear and open to receive how to move forward with the solutions of resolving that polarity when it comes to others and the world. And so the way I see this transit working together, both in tropical and in sidereal, is that we first have to resolve that process of inner fragmentation. And then we will naturally be open to our mind tuning in and receiving inspiration and downloads and understandings about the ways that we can move into the world and demonstrate that coherence and bring more of that coherence. So I see that as actually being connected to the same process. They're just two different levels of accessing it. Okay, so let's take a look at the tarot. Check the overall energy here. Heart activation, self-love, following your bliss, restoration. Stormy. Take time to breathe out. That is the same card that came up in the last reading I did. That is a very powerful indicator there of that energy. Beginner's mind. And expression. Okay, this is great. So this overall energy reading has built into it that same polarity that I was talking about, is that the heart activation is the unification of this energy coming together. I almost see that the heart is actually created as the positive and negative polarity, as the father and mother energy come together and exchange in union. They give birth to the heart. They give birth to the sun. They give birth to that energy that becomes the synthesis of both of their influence of their own expression. And so we are literally giving birth to a new level of our own heart, because as we merge this positive and negative polarity and this inner fragmentation, our own heart begins to express differently. It begins to operate in a more coherent way, and the heart sends out electromagnetic pulses of energy from it. And so just as I was saying, the positive and the negative is electromagnetism, that the more we become coherent in this process and activate these energies of the heart, that electromagnetic signal becomes much stronger. And so there's this other side of it. Even though there's this amazing rebirthing of this energy happening within us, it still feels tense. We still feel that there's unresolved tension, and that's okay. That's the polarity in action right there. That we bring this new coherent activated heart into those storms, into that stormy weather, into that place where there are many people who are still not operating in coherence. And when we can feel how powerful we are when we send out that heart signal of coherence around other people that are not necessarily experiencing that same coherence, it impacts and changes them. They feel it in their own heart. And so kind of what this energy is suggesting is understand how powerful this heart activation is and how important it is to bring this into the world and to share it, but also how to relax in the process, because the energies are so strong. There's such an intensity of this transformation happening. We need to pace ourselves with it. We need to relax. We need to have time in stillness and meditation and in nature. And I like that beginner's mind is here, because it's almost as if saying we're learning how to be human in a whole new way. If all we've ever known is how humans operate in polarity and conflict, we don't really know what it is to be a human that operates in coherence. And so that's a new experience for ourselves as humanity, and we can be gentle with ourselves. We can understand that we are just at the beginning of this, and there's a lot we still have to learn. So just as it is very exciting and it's very powerful, it does require us to be gentle with ourselves, allow it to unfold in its own timing, and know that we'll feel in sync with the rhythms of how this wants to express, how this wants to move through life. It's all about listening to that inner voice, that inner sense of the self that just feels like it knows what to do. Okay? That when we can be really clear with how listening to that inner part of ourselves, it will inform us on exactly how, when, and where to express. And so I see this as being very much still internal process of reorientation and recalibration, but it is beginning to call us into the expression of ourselves in the world. But that needs to be a natural process that really comes from a centered place, where we're not pushing some idea or trying to force something to happen, that we just begin to relax into it and realize that this change is happening through us because we're the ones changing. Okay. I love this. The center of the reading is the sun. The sun and the Prince of Cups. Okay, so this center energy is, again, about the expression of the light. This is the expression of spirit, the soul's energy, as it wishes to move through the human experience, but it has to move through the lens of what really works for you. So what the Prince of Cups has taught me is that when we don't honor our deepest needs and our own values, we create an identity to do what we think is best for others. We can become overly loving or nice or polite. We can be overly giving in ways that is not actually in touch with our authenticity. If we look deep enough, we can see that we create these identities so that we can feel accepted and feel that we're a good person and feel that others like us. And that is based in an insecurity and actually a disconnection from the soul's energy. And so what the Prince of Cups has shown me is that when you get really clear with yourself about what you value, what you need, what's important to you, what you prefer, what kind of life do you really want to live, who do you really want to be, you can even get as specific as to take out a piece of paper and write a list of what you value most. And just get clear about what that is. Because what this is saying is that the sun, that expression of that heart coherence and that light, will only be true and clear when it moves through the lens of connecting with your authentic self, with connecting with what you truly value and how you truly feel and who you truly are. It won't really work through the identity anymore. And so it's good to be clear about what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Because when you're in touch with this energy of expressing yourself and feeling connected to that light, then you're really only interested in connecting with others in those situations that is a match for that coherence. And it doesn't mean you can't encounter other aspects of things that may be a vibrational mismatch, or encounter other aspects of fragmentation, but you'll naturally be drawn to move in channels and be surrounded by people and do things that simply just reflect back to you your preferences and what makes you feel most comfortable. And giving yourself permission to know that it's okay, that the universe is actually designed to allow ourselves to gravitate into a way of being where we feel most supported. Like that Cancer energy, we feel most supported, connected, nurtured by others and our environment. Okay, so this foundation is the Fool and the Two of Cups. Now that's beautiful energy too. This is the new journey. This is the new initiation. This is setting off on the path with nothing except your own connection to love. It's almost as if you knew that you could go in any direction and completely enter the unknown, because the connection that you have with spirit and the connection that you have with yourself is so rooted and running the essence of pure love through your system that you don't really need anything else. This is why when I think about the stories of Jesus just hearing the voice of spirit saying, go to this village, and even if he didn't really have anything or didn't know anybody there, or he just listened to the voice and went to the village. That's the kind of presence that this is when you're so connected with yourself and with spirit, you will go and do and follow that inclination and know you don't need anything, because everything will be provided as part of the expression and the experience of following that flow. Okay. Okay, so here we have the future energies. We have the Prince of Pentacles and the Devil. Okay. So I don't think the Devil card has ever shown up on, not this Devil card has never shown up on my channel. So I'm going to take an opportunity to explain how my relationship with the Devil feels very unique and different. But initially, the Page of Pentacles is showing us that this is a time of planting seeds. This is a time where we take our inspired ideas and we begin to sow the fields. We begin to put out the intention and the idea of how we want our reality to unfold. In very much the same way the Prince of Cups is understanding what works for you and doesn't work for you. That's kind of an emotional connection of feeling supported. The Prince of Pentacles is, what do you really want to do? What do you want to put your energy towards? What can you conceive of as being the life that you wish to live? Even if it's just in the seed form and it hasn't even begun to manifest yet, it's just as important to have that clear idea and begin to put that energy out. Now, the fact that it's relating with the Devil, the way I see the Devil is that it's unmanifest creative potential. So in a sense, if our creative potential, we have so much power and so much light to create anything that we want, but we just don't really know that. We weren't taught that. And in fact, we were kind of taught the opposite. We were taught how to dim our light, how we're powerless, and how we need to just fit in and get along with others. And because we have so much access to all this light, but we don't know how to use it, what happens is that light would go to move out of our system and it will hit a block. that it can't move through, and that block immediately turns into a shadow, and that shadow reflects back to us an experience to show us where we're blocked. All the shadows in this world arrive to point to where we're holding our light back. That's why shadow work is working with the shadow, honoring and understanding that energy until it informs you and directs you to the place that you can shift your own energy and allow that creative flow to move through those channels. So anytime the devil comes up, it's basically like saying, okay, you have a whole new creative potential available, but you also need to know how to use it. You need to align to it and align with it. And so as this energy moves forward, again, very powerful feeling of being connected to spirit and being really clear about knowing what you want and how to move forward, but understanding that when you meet resistance and you meet those shadows along the way, to work with them, allow them to inform you on any limiting beliefs, any conditioned programs, any ideas that are still not allowing the light and the energy to flow through in an authentic way. And the devil is the most compassionate reflection that we have to be there in service to us as we learn how to align and express our own light. Okay, so here is the internal influences. We have the Hermit, and the external influences is the Three of Cups. So this is, again, this is really beautiful energy today. The Hermit is about sourcing the inner light. It's not necessarily about being alone. It's about being connected to the light within. And as, again, we've had this big theme coming through here about this heart activation, that the light of the sun is shining through and giving focus and direction to your life. And this is the devotion, the inner devotion to honoring and being in relationship with that light moving forward. And yet the Three of Cups, what shows up in our external environment is Mercury in Cancer, which is these are structures and forms that feel supportive. So again, as we move forward, just look for those people, places, and things where you feel the natural flow of that support and that connection. And that's why it's good that we have experiences of family structures that feel really close, where we understand how we relate with family in a way, why it's important that we create families to feel supported. But we all don't have families like that necessarily, but we do have access to experiencing a relationship in our life, in a relational energy in our life, where everyone feels like family in a certain way. The entire world feels like our home. That the Cancer energy isn't designed to actually isolate it inside your house. It's meant to operate as a operating system in your own being so that you recreate that everywhere you go, in every relationship that you experience. All right, so here we have the gateway, the archetype that is wanting to be embodied that leads to the outcome, and it's perfect. The Justice card, the word on the card is adjustment. This is the balance. This is balancing. And kind of what I'm seeing is that when we experience the distortions and the disruptions in our life, when we experience suffering and pain and disillusionment and those challenges that come up, it's just indicating that there is imbalanced energy running in our code. If there's lines of coding where that positive and negative energy is not cooperating, there's still some kind of conflict or disconnect, and that line of code needs to be balanced. That line of code needs to be overwritten with a new code that is more balanced. And so it's just part of the process that we go through life, and we make self-corrections and we make adjustments as we go. And it's just looking to whatever area of your life feels the most imbalanced, where the most triggers might be, what relationships may be feeling the most conflict, what part of the world feels the most uneasy. Just take any area or aspect of your life and just be willing to look at it through the lens of how can I understand the polarity of these energies better within myself and see where balancing can occur that I haven't known how to create coherence thus far. And the universe, and again, this is Jupiter. Jupiter is the part of the consciousness that's like, I'm here to bring coherence. It's just a matter of us being open to perceive it, interpret that information, and understand how to allow that coding to change. Okay. So the outcome of this reading is the Knight of Swords. And the way I usually feel about the Knight of Swords is it's taking inspired action on the idea. So swords represent the mind, our ideas, the way we process the information, and the Knight of Swords is a forward movement. And so it's an active engagement with inspired ideas. And what I feel like this is the hidden power behind this time is that we all have this new seed of creative potential to make choices and to make changes and to take action in our world that we didn't know that we had. And we're all kind of waking up to this in our own way, but at the same time. And it's just really a focus to ask ourselves, where do I feel the most inspired? Where do I feel the most excited? When I get an idea that comes from within that field of inner listening, how can I express that? Because if we every single day just tune in and feel what idea, inspiration that genuinely feels the most exciting, that feels like something we can actually take action on, and just do that with no expectation of the outcome, do it just because it's an inspired idea, we would see that certain balls will start rolling and certain energies will start moving in a way that they didn't before. And sometimes it can just take one inspired idea that can open up a whole field of new experiences and new ways of expressing yourself in life. And so I feel like that's kind of the outcome of all this, is trusting ourselves more, trusting yourself to listen to what you receive that feels that you want to express, and know how it's in alignment with your values and your needs and your desires, and look for ways to plant those seeds and put that idea out so you can begin to consciously engage the way that spirit, the way the inspiration is wanting to move through the desire, the negative polarity, and open new space and create new opportunity in your life. All right, we've got a couple more cards we'll look at here. This is Celebration, and this is Collective Awakening. Collective Awakening, I think, came up in the last reading too. So this is wink, wink, nudge, nudge here to take time to breathe out, take time to rest and relax, allow this process to unfold, and also to celebrate. This is the time that we've been waiting for this collective awakening. This is very clear. This is the time that we're all waking up to the truth of who we are and the potential that we have to experience ourselves in truly powerful, authentic ways and move into this world and experience things that we previously would not have thought were even possible. And yet it's still a process, and a lot of it is still, again, in the alchemy mode, it's in the integration mode, but this energy that's coming forward today from Jupiter going direct is very clear. This is the coherence of the light within you, being born from the reconciliation and the merging of polarities that had been fragmented. And this is not just happening within you, this is happening within everybody, to different degrees and different ways and different expressions, but to look into the world and see this is happening to everybody in their own way, I feel like is an important thing. It's easy in the spiritual communities to feel like, oh, I'm the enlightened one, I'm the one who's doing the healing work, I'm the one that gets it and nobody else does. And I understand why that perspective can seem that way, but it's not true. Because when you go into the deepest levels of understanding how consciousness works, you'll see that your awakening is the awakening of the collective. You are interfacing with the information of awakening itself, both within and without. And unless you use your perception to see something other than that, then that's all that it can be. It's truly consciousness waking up to itself, but in a variety of forms, in a variety of ways, and a variety of expressions, that each person's expression of it is not actually any of your business. Because when we understand coherence, we understand that coherence needs all these different pieces and parts to work together, and to feel that's happening, and just resist the urge where the mind still wants to create those separations and those judgments. Honor them, feel the feelings, understand that that's the shadow, that's the devil energy, that's the unmanifest creative potential still trying to convince you that there's somebody else out there that's going to take everything down and make the world worse. And I don't see it that way. I just see that as creative potential, and specifically a perspective that has not been shifted into seeing the truth of this collective awakening, and why we should believe in everyone and believe in the trajectory of our experience on Earth. Okay. Oh my goodness. This card, I don't know how many readings I've pulled this out. I didn't even read from this deck for like 2 weeks, and I pulled it out, and here it is again. So if you followed my videos in the last month or so, you've seen this is probably the third or fourth time that this closing door completion card has come out. I'm going to read it from the book again. But this is the strongest synchronicity from this whole reading. I can tell you right now from my own experience. I've been doing these readings for a couple months. This closing door, this completion, this is something that goes hand in hand with the celebration and the collective awakening. This is the closing of that energy, the ending of that old world. Whatever the old world is or was, or that polarized expression of conflict, is literally closing. It's ending. We are closing the door on it and stepping into an entirely new room in the mansion, an entirely new reality, an entirely new world that is worthy of our celebration, that is worthy of the expression of our light. And only if we are still hung up on not seeing it that way, we still are learning to align those parts of the self. Endings, completion, your greater calling. When the closing door shows up, it's a call to recognize an ending, to terminate a relationship, job, task, or situation that has been dragging on far too long. Unlock the cage you've been trapped in and shut the door behind you. This is not the time to worry about what others might think or feel. Instead, break with routine, consider what you think, how you feel, and be true to your heart's calling. It's time to walk out the door. If you do not see a door but only a solid wall in front of you, ask for assistance. Muster the courage to say no more. Remember, as well, no one else needs to be wrong in order for you to do what you've known you needed to do for a long time. If the door to a project or a relationship has been closed to you, stop knocking on it. You've tried that already, and no one answered. At least not in the way you would have liked. Take this as a gift, difficult and painful as it might be, and move on. Every door that shuts is an invitation to find another way, another path to your destination. Better to recognize this earlier than later. How many of us leave a relationship or a job years after we knew it was time to move on? Stop wallowing in the pain and lingering on the reasons why things did not work. It is keeping you from your greater calling. Bow deeply before that closed door and give thanks to the lessons and set yourself free. Yeah, so this is definitely, again, this is a completion point, and I feel the important aspect of understanding this is that there are certain relationships and certain ways of moving in the world, certain working at certain jobs, or choosing to do certain repetitious patterns that are still connected to the old energy. And we can feel it. You can feel it when you know you're still engaging that energy that's connected to the old. And understandably so, we hold on to things longer than we would otherwise if we knew, because there's a comfort and a security in that holding on. So that's, I think, the final piece of advice here is that understand that we're moving through this new door, we're moving into this new world, and yet if there are still pieces that you feel need to be left behind in that old world, now's the time to choose that. Oh, I did draw this card, although I didn't pull it in the reading, as I wasn't sure I was going to. And this is Horseman, Herald of Change. So I think this is, again, another nudge from the universe about the fire horse energy and how much is changing right now. And to me, the horse represents power and freedom. I'm a horse in the Chinese astrology, and that's how I've come to understand this, is to really understanding the connection with our own power and our own freedom. We are absolutely, unconditionally, unlimitedly powerful, and we're also absolutely, completely free. But it doesn't always feel that way, because we have so much power that we can use our power to not feel powerful. And we can use our freedom to not feel free. But neither of those is true. We are unlimited and powerful, and we are completely free. Okay, that's all I have for you today. If you'd like to go deeper in these energies, I suggest you check out my 3-part series with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I really break down a lot of what that transit is teaching us about accessing quantum consciousness and learning how to step into this new reality that we're all feeling is beginning to emerge. So again, if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe or share the video with somebody else who may benefit from hearing this kind of message. And I'll see you next time.